you've gotten to this point where you've gotten to something you've labeled precision medicine. So can you tell us how you were able to take all these different tools, solutions, ideas, and come up with this precision medicine approach?
And I think a lot of this stems with, just the organizational construct of
Yeah.
how things are kind of grouped together here. And, by definition, the NIH defines precision medicine as the interface of lifestyle, environment, and biology. And to me, that just sounds like really good medicine,
Yeah.
precision, integrative, functional, whatever you want to call it, right? And having that molecular background and teaching the omics really kind of led me down this road of like thinking along these lines of we could measure this stuff, and theoretically you can't manage what you don't measure, and furthermore, there's I was at a University of Pennsylvania at a multi-omic conference in precision medicine a few months ago, last year sometime, and I went up to the director, and after witnessing all these amazing MD, PhD researchers presenting on their amazing science and whatever they're doing, and I said, "Hey, this is wonderful, but this is still isolated in silos. Even though it's
Mhm.
precision that's segregated, with the intention of trying to find the magic bullet for a drug." And I'm
Right.
like, that's cool, right? But there's other clinical applications that we could have using this precision medicine landscape and format that could be used to personalize healthcare. So I told the director at UPenn, this is what I do in my practice. And they're like, what? You could do all this testing, right? And I said, yeah. And believe it or not, Medicare pays for some of them,
Mhm.
and so we were, they were really impressed by that. And I came home and I was like, all right, I'm teaching this class or all these classes. And all these major academic institutions are having their centers for precision medicine. University of Pittsburgh, Stanford, Mayo, all these prestigious, kind of centers of excellence, but everybody, they're not talking. It's still that same
Yes.
rigmarole framework of allopathic, pill for ill, reductionistic kind of processing. That's with the goal of let's find that magic bullet, and they're
Hmm.
missing the big picture of all of this. So for me, I came back and I started the American Board of Precision Medicine. We're a 501(c), and we're in our infancy. And we've recruited some of the amazing faculty from around the country at major academic institutions that is providing content and training for us. And we're with the goal and intention of graduating our first cohort here, hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months, of precision medicine physicians that are able to use this framework of understanding and drive innovation. Because the reality is, when you go to your doctor and my insurance doesn't pay for this test, it's bullshit, right? That, first of all, like the whole CBC, CMP, and all that other stuff is hospital-based medicine that is only going to determine if you're going to live or die, right? There's so
Right.
much more information, and we need to push innovation from the medical laboratory side of things so that we could adopt this multi-omic kind of diagnostic approach, right? And for me personally, most people will say, well, what about the promise of genetics, right? Is that still there? Is this still going to hold, true for being so deterministic in regards to health and health outcomes? And I'm going to say no. I really do believe that 20% of your health information is going to be kind of custom, or derived from your book of life, your genetic blueprint. But the
Mhm.
other 80 to 90% is going to be based on the environmental signals and inputs influencing epigenetic gene expression, right? So it's one, there's forgot the researcher that said this, but it's a generic term that's thrown around. But genetics is loading the gun, but the environment's pulling the trigger, right?
Yeah.
That's common phrase within precision medicine. And I
Yeah.
think that how I leverage genomics, for example, is not in this context of determinism, genetic determinism, but more so empowerment, and of how we use this information to further identify potential patterns of predisposition and vulnerability or weaknesses, right? And oftentimes you could see certain things that track, right? Whether it's dyslipidemia and identifying a cluster of genes that influences hypercholesterol, or LP little a, or ApoB, and all these different genes that influence kind of, okay, your environmental susceptibility to dietetic kind of factors, right? So you see that there's a lot of talk about ApoE, right, in regards to Alzheimer's and those genetic predispositions. I so for me personally, I use this information for empowerment, not
Mhm.
to stress anybody. And I use it in the context of what's called polygenic risk scores, looking at a cluster of genes that influence a specific, phenotype, and kind of uncode that, a little bit further at looking at kind of some of the nuances of what, how those genes influence some key regulatory biochemical pathways and maybe even some disease dysfunction. So with that being said, I love looking at genomics and unpacking that. And for a lot of my patients, once we go through this, I'm basically explaining them to themselves. I'm like, hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you experience this and that and the other? And they're like, oh my gosh, of course, from rotator cuff issues, tendon issues to neurological issues and certain, kind of behavioral things that are identified due to some of these genetic kind of imprinting, So it's very interesting and I like to have fun with it.